morning, Zanzi. You're on your Feel Good Breakfast show right here on S3. And this morning, we are prioritizing our mental health. My lovely, if you did not know, according to a world report in 2021, apparently South Africa ranked amongst the lower countries in terms of their mental health challenges that they face. Unfortunately, saying that, yes, we do indeed have a mental health crisis. And we say that because amongst the 300,000 individuals that were chosen to be a part of that specific report, it was shown that South Africa was not doing so well. So this is why this morning we've called in some lovely ladies who are going to be helping us out in terms of understanding how it is that we can possibly allow our mental health to be a little bit better, but also more than anything else, how we can help out our fellow ladies as well. So let's welcome to Expresso this morning. It is none other than Dr. Karen Luck as well as Dr. Rushda Olafir, and they're going to be chatting to us all about societal pressures that women face and a whole lot more. Ladies, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Amazing, thank you. Rushda, I want to start with you, please.
Sure.
In terms of us and talking about women with their mental health when it comes to societal pressures, as well as even, gender roles, what exactly is it that we're looking at in terms of mental health?
So I think when it comes to societal pressures, there's a lot of different things that women feel that they need to be, how they need to act, things that they need to be doing. And when they break that mold, when they sort of deviate from the norm, then it leads to a lot of self-esteem issues where, they do a lot of comparisons, but she's a mom and she works and she's doing so well and here I am. And I don't think social media always helps that because people obviously put forward a front that isn't always what's happening, but it does sort of worsen the social construct of what womanhood looks like, right?
Yes.
So that's the one thing. I think over and above that, women typically will manage lots of different roles, which can become mentally taxing, exhausting, leading to burnout, those types of things. And then obviously we have hormonal changes that cause different conditions in women than it would in men, for example, as well. So there's a lot of different pressures that women struggle with. And I think in this country specifically, one thing that we genuinely cannot ignore is also the gender-based violence issue, epidemic, if you will. And that's something that causes a lot of mental health issues in terms of anxiety, depression, PTSD, and those kinds of things. And it's just unfortunate that it's the sort of world that we live in this country. But it's important to recognize it, I think.
It really is unfortunate. And, even when I was looking at us and having this conversation, I even forgot about gender-based violence. That is something that is a huge problem in this country. And I can imagine it affects so many of us, those who are affected directly and indirectly.
Sure.
But, Karen, I want to ask you, when we talk about race as well as economic status and all of these different things that, we might hold or be, how does this affect women's mental health? And how can we better support women who come from different backgrounds?
If we go way back to World War II. Women, when the men were shipped off to war, women took their place in the workplace.
True.
They started servicing the telegraph. They did postal services. They even went as far as to the ones making ammunition.
Yes.
And that was what they did and started taking their place in the workplace. And that is where I think we forgot that mental health issues really started because the pressure of the workload being placed on them. So if we look at race specifically, I don't think mental health chooses race, but we have to deal with what is expected of each different culture.
Yeah.
And there are different roles ascribed to women from different cultures. So I've recently had a client in my office. She was a Muslim lady. And she was complaining about the fact that she's a professional, she works hard, she studied hard, she's been promoted through the ranks through hard work. And in her home, this is not appreciated and accepted because it goes against the social norms of her home. And that creates a lot of anxiety and depression. Plus the fact that she's still a mom, she has to fulfill those roles, and she also wants to be super mom. Because everything has to be right and done. And in the society that we live in today, single working households are actually in the minority. Both mom and dad have to work, or both partners have to work to provide a lifestyle for the family. And that in itself also brings for the mom certain guilt feelings because I am working, I'm not spending enough time with my children. Am I doing the right thing? Shouldn't I be at home? But then I can't afford this. So all of those pressures add to mental health. So when we look at mental health, you can't just box it. there are so many things that influence it. And as Rushda has said, that hormones play a major role.
Yeah.
And we can't get away from that.
And
menopause
it's from so many
is coming.
different sides, yes.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. And I want us to touch on that a little bit later.
Yes.
But I want to come back just to, the societal norms.
Yes.
There's so many different stigmas when we talk about mental health. And I want to ask you, please, Rushda, how can we better, fight these stigmas? And what are some of the misconceptions that people have around women's mental health?
So I think the big one is probably that most mental health issues are rooted in hormonal changes. If a woman sort of acts out, then it's, oh, she's PMSing, she must be, feeling some kind of way. But, I mean, women can get all the mental health conditions that men can get.
Yes.
It's not specific. We just have some extra. So it's just a little bit more.
Just a little bit more.
But it's not necessarily that anxiety or depression has to be a PMS symptom, or it's not necessarily something that just happens in menopause. Yes, it does happen in menopause, and we'll get to that in a second, but that's not the only time that it happens, right? Yes. So I think sort of labeling every outburst that a woman might have as hormonal is quite unfair.
Yes.
And that obviously just centers around education, awareness, and that type of thing, where you can't just blame every single thing on it being hormonal. I think other things that women are often labeled as are emotional, irrational, illogical, those kinds of things. And you can have emotion and still be rational.
100%.
So yes, you might have an outburst, but that, again, is not a mental health issue if you are reacting in a way that somebody else might not have reacted. So it's also about drawing the line between what is normal and what's pathological, and the tolerances that different people sort of have.
100%. Ladies, I'm so glad that we're continuing this conversation, because you're already just enlightening so many people out there, including myself. So thank you so much. And this is why, Expresso family, you got to stay exactly where you are. Karen and Rushda are still going to be taking us through how it is that we can better support our own mental health, but also the mental health of others, and particularly in Women's Month. Right now, though, Ewan is standing by in Cape TZ. Ewan, what's happening?
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
It's always a good morning when we are able to have important conversations right here on your Feel Good Breakfast show. And I say this because we're talking about one of the most important parts of our bodies, the brain, if not the most important. And it is all about how we can make it healthy, my love, how we can understand that, in fact, we do need to look after our mental health, and how we can do so by building resilience against mental health challenges, as well as just us hearing about the different ways in which we can cope when it comes to those really big life changes. And this is why we've got Dr. Karen Luck as well as Dr. Rushda Olafir with us. And ladies, thank you so much for being here, because when we talk about ending of Women's Month with a bang, I think this is exactly it. Finding out how we can, in fact, tap into our superpower of being a woman with the best mental health. And Karen, I want to come to you, please, in terms of just us talking about the resilience I spoke of now. How are we able to actually do that when we are trying to build mental health resilience, but also in terms of navigating, things that might come at us when we talk about, big life changes?
Big life changes. Let's start there. Big life changes in most women's lives is when they go from being a young girl into adulthood and then becoming a mother, first-time mothers.
Yes.
The stress of being pregnant, the hormonal changes that happen, and then thereafter to be a mom has a major impact on how we view ourselves and our capabilities and being super mom.
Yeah.
Huge thing. Then we talk about hormonal changes, as we addressed earlier. Menopause is one of the biggest changes that happen. In that time, women start feeling that they are no longer what they used to be. They're slower. Their memory goes. They feel depressed. They feel disconnected from a lot of things. And they don't understand what is happening to them. And not knowing and having access to various platforms where they can seek help is a big problem.
Yeah.
It really is a big problem. So how do we balance work-life stress? Very difficult one.
Yeah.
So people need to be in touch with what their own needs are, especially what I'm good at. What do I need to relax? How do I relax? How do I find proper nutrition? How do I do fit exercise into my daily life, and how can I still be a super mom?
Yes, and like you said, so many of us want to be super moms,
Absolutely.
Those that are already moms, those that are one day wanting to be moms. So then I want to come to you, please, Rushda. When we talk about trying to support other women, during these life changes, how can we do that?
So I think it's really about building that community, building your village, taking the help when you can. Because often, as Karen was saying, there's a lot of sort of guilt that comes from me being incapable person in terms of being able to manage work and looking after a baby, or the transition from going from maternity leave back to the workplace, for example. So if people are offering the help and it's true and genuine, then we also need to be comfortable to take it and be able to make that call to say, I am struggling, and seeking out help, because help does exist. And yes, it starts with diet, lifestyle changes, all of those things. But if it's bad enough, maybe talking to a therapist would be helpful if you feel like you don't have a support structure that's conducive to you getting better, or feeling like you need medication, which is not a failure on your part. It's not a comparative thing again where it's other people do this every day, why am I struggling? It's just recognizing your own needs and really honing in on that and being the best that you can be. Because like she said, if you don't know that it's there, how are you going to know to look for it? How are you going to know to seek out answers and help? And if you're not your best self, it's really difficult to give your best self to your child as well, and that's something that every child deserves.
100%. And ladies, you're so right about the knowing, because I know that for myself, I was able to go back to therapy like recently, and I think only then I understood that this year has actually been really difficult for me. I thought it was only like the last couple of weeks, but it was actually just very mentally taxing, like since the very beginning. And I didn't know that, which was just such a crazy thing to try and even like bring myself, to understand.
But along the same vein, technology is it's a double-edged sword, because technology can be very bad. Social media, when you want to look like the supermodel, you want to look like that. Extra pressure. But in terms of technology, there are so many self-help platforms that you can access, self-help groups, information about various types of mental health disorders that you can actually access, which, if knowledge helps you to plan forward and take charge of your life.
100%. And you're not wrong about that. Even with me going to therapy, I think there was one thing that I came across on social media, and that was the thing that prompted me to be like, hey, doc, by the way, do I have this thing? And she was like, actually, you do. And I was like, oh, my goodness. So, and it helped me to be able to get the right medication and all of that. But then can I ask you, in terms of those support groups that you're talking about, rather, what makes for a good support group in terms of women possibly, helping each other out and just that community? But also on top of that, how can women play into, really being part of the advocacy for mental health for women?
I think they've got to speak out. So knowledge helps. So if you join various platforms, groups, there's a mother's group, there's a depression group, there is an anxiety and depression group. There are so many platforms that you can access where you can talk about your problem. And once you are talking to others that feel the same things you do, it makes the load lighter. And we move forward. And people don't always realize that they need to access that. And physical exercise, it raises the endorphins. It makes you feel better. Being out with others in the same position as you, that all boosts mental health. And people just need to be made aware of it.
I love that. And Rushta, what would you say to anybody that might be struggling with their mental health right now?
I think it's really important to start looking for those resources. And like she said, technology is really helpful in that sense. I've had many patients come through and say, I saw this TikTok. I saw something on Instagram, and it made me think that I tick all those boxes. Maybe that's what I have. And sometimes it's not what they have. But most of the time it actually is, right? And they might not have known and sort of been living ignorantly. So it's really helpful often that it's a new platform of awareness, I suppose, and just using that to make those decisions. Check in with other people to say, do you think that this sounds like me? Does this sort of resonate with you when I describe myself? And then obviously taking the necessary steps in terms of seeking out help, whether that's therapy or whether that's to see a healthcare practitioner to get onto medication, or just discuss what the options are and get a diagnosis.
Amazing. So social media isn't all bad.
No.
I love that. Coming from the doctors, we can trust it. Ladies, thank you so much. This was such an important conversation, and I feel like you guys led us through it so beautifully. So thank you, and please continue doing the amazing work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is always so beautiful to be able to have these conversations, as I keep saying. And my love, I hope that you do take the time to check in on yourself, like the doctor said, and more than anything else, check in on your loved ones as well. It is all about us ending off Women's Month on a high, and we're doing so by talking about the most important thing, our mental health. Right now, though, I know two people who are very good for my mental health. It's Graham and Ewan. And right now, Graham's in Cape Town. Graham, what's happening? Or rather, forgive me, Ewan, what's happening?